"If your prayer heals me, I'll give you my fortune," said the sick billionaire to the beggar girl. Richard Thompson felt the weight of his 70 years like never before. After 4 months at Mercy General Hospital, the most expensive in New York, none of the specialists could figure out what was draining his life force day by day. It was on a rainy Tuesday afternoon that everything changed. Richard was alone in his room when he heard small footsteps approaching. He opened his eyes and saw a girl of about 9 standing by his bed. She wore a faded beige blouse, her dark hair messy as if she'd slept outdoors. "Who are you, child?" Richard asked, his voice hoarse from medication. "My name is Emily," she replied without fear. "I came to pray for you." "Pray?" Richard nearly laughed, but the sincerity in the girl's dark eyes made him pause. "How did you get in here?" "I know every corner of this hospital," Emily said, stepping closer. "I've lived here a long time." Before Richard could question her further, the head nurse, Margaret, appeared at the door, her face red with anger. "Emily, how many times have I told you not to bother the patients?" Margaret shouted, rushing toward the girl. "Wait," Richard said, raising a weak hand. "Let her stay. Mr. Thompson, she's a street child. She shouldn't be here," Margaret explained, reaching for Emily's arm. "I said let her stay," Richard repeated, firmer this time. Margaret hesitated, glancing between the billionaire and the girl. After a moment, she sighed and left the room, muttering about responsibilities and rules. Emily smiled for the first time, revealing a few missing front teeth. "Thank you, Mr. Richard. How do you know my name?" "Everyone here talks about you. They say you're very rich and that no doctor can figure out what's wrong with you." Richard studied the girl's face. There was something about her that intrigued him, a wisdom beyond her years. "And you think you can help me?" "Not me," Emily said, sitting in the chair beside his bed. "But my prayers can. My grandma always said that when you pray from the heart, good things happen." "Your grandmother? Where is she?" Emily's smile faded for a moment. "She went to heaven 2 years ago. Since then, I've lived on the streets." Richard felt something stir in his chest, an emotion he hadn't felt in a long time. "Why do you want to help me? You don't even know me." "Because everyone deserves someone who cares," Emily replied with a simplicity that made Richard's eyes well up. Over the next few days, Emily appeared in Richard's room at the same time every afternoon, 3 o'clock sharp. She'd sit in the chair and talk about her life, her grandmother, and the other homeless people she knew. Richard, who hadn't spoken to anyone but doctors and staff in years, began eagerly awaiting these visits. "Tell me about your grandmother," Richard asked one afternoon. "Grandma Ruth was the kindest person in the world," Emily said, her eyes shining. "She took care of everyone in our neighborhood. When someone got sick, Grandma Ruth would go to them, make soup, and pray until they got better. And it worked?" "Always," Emily answered with conviction. "Grandma Ruth said the power wasn't in the words of the prayer, but in the love you put into them." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. Victoria Thompson arrived at the hospital that afternoon with her usual executive haste. At 42, she had inherited not only her father's business, but also his cold, calculating personality. When she saw a street girl sitting beside her father's bed, her blood boiled. "What is this child doing here?" asked Victoria, storming into the room like a hurricane. "Victoria, this is Emily," said Richard calmly. "She's been keeping me company." "Company? Dad, she's a beggar. She could have diseases, she could steal something." "She won't steal anything," Richard defended. "And as for diseases, I'm already sick anyway." Victoria looked at Emily with contempt, but the girl didn't look away. There was a dignity in her that only irritated the businesswoman more. "What's your plan, girl? Get money from my father by pretending to be his friend?" "Victoria!" scolded Richard. "I don't want money," Emily said simply. "I just want him to get better." "As if I'd believe that," Victoria laughed bitterly. "Get out of here now before I call security." "She's not leaving," said Richard, trying to sit up in bed. "Actually, Emily, I have a proposal for you." Victoria and Emily both looked at him in surprise. "If your prayers heal me, I'll give you my entire fortune." The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria turned pale while Emily just shook her head. Shook. "Dad, you can't be serious," Victoria whispered. "I've never been more serious in my life," Richard replied, staring straight at Emily. "What do you say, girl?" "I think you don't need to give me anything," said Emily. "I'll pray for you no matter what. But I want to. It's a promise." Victoria left the room without a word, but Richard could see the fury in her steps. He knew he'd started a war, but for the first time in months, he felt alive. Dr. Michael Robinson was examining Richard Thompson's test results with bewilderment. At 35, he was the youngest doctor on the team treating the billionaire, and also the most curious about unusual cases. "Your vitals have improved 15% in the last week," Michael said, reviewing the numbers. "I can't explain it. Maybe it's the company," Richard suggested with a half smile. "The girl?" Michael lowered his voice. "I've heard the nurses talking about her. Dr. Victoria is not happy at all." "My daughter never approved of anything that made me happy," Richard replied, an old sadness crossing his face. Michael noticed the shift in his patient's mood. During his studies, he'd read about the connection between emotional state and physical recovery, but he'd never seen such a clear example. "Mr. Thompson, may I ask you a personal question?" "Go ahead." "When was the last time you felt truly happy?" Richard was silent for a long moment, gazing out the hospital window. "It's been a long time, Doctor. A very long time." That afternoon, when Emily arrived for her daily visit, she found Richard more animated than usual. "Emily, tell me about the other people on the streets. How do you help each other?" "We look out for one another," Emily explained, sitting in her usual chair. "There's old Jerry, who shares whatever food he gets. There's Miss Betty, who watches over the younger kids when their parents aren't around. And there's Derek, who protects everyone from the bad men." "Bad men?" "Sometimes men come who want to hurt the kids or steal our food, but Derek is big and strong, so they're scared of him." Richard felt something tighten in his chest. The thought of a child like Emily living in constant danger disturbed him deeply. "Aren't you afraid?" "I am," Emily admitted. "But Grandma Ruth always said when you're afraid, that's when you have to be bravest." "Your grandmother was a wise woman." "She was. She also said everyone has a sad story, but that doesn't mean the story has to have a sad ending." Richard looked at Emily with growing admiration. How could a child who had lost everything still hold so much hope? "And you believe that?" "I have to," Emily said, smiling. "Otherwise, what would be the point of going on?" Meanwhile, in the hospital office, Victoria was having a tense conversation with Dr. William Peterson, the chief physician. "Doctor, my father is in no condition to make important decisions," argued Victoria. "That girl is clearly taking advantage of the situation." "Dr. Victoria, I understand your concern, but your father has shown significant improvement since the child started visiting him," replied Dr. William diplomatically. "Improvement? He's delusional. He promised his entire fortune to some beggar." "Your father's mental state is lucid," the doctor insisted. "I can vouch for that." Victoria clenched her fists in frustration. She knew she needed a different approach. "Doctor, that child shouldn't be roaming freely around the hospital. What if she has a contagious disease? What if she's working for someone?" Dr. William considered Victoria's words. It was indeed irregular for a street child to have unrestricted access to the hospital. "I'll speak to security about it," he promised. Victoria smiled for the first time in days. Maybe she couldn't tackle the problem head-on, but she could make things difficult for the girl. That night, Emily was sleeping under an awning near the hospital when she was awakened by voices. "Are you sure it's her?" asked a male voice. "Absolutely sure," replied another. "The description matches perfectly." Emily shrank back, trying to make herself invisible. Two men in suits approached her resting spot. "Emily Grace Turner," one of them asked. "I don't know who that is." Emily lied, trembling. "Don't lie, girl. We know who you are. And we know you've been bothering important people." "I haven't bothered anyone," Emily protested, trying to edge away. "Listen carefully," the man said, crouching to her level. "You're going to stop visiting that hospital. You'll disappear and never come back, understood? But I haven't done anything wrong. That doesn't matter. What matters is you're causing trouble for people who can make your life very difficult." The men walked away, leaving Emily alone and terrified. She knew she couldn't sleep there anymore, but she also didn't know where to go. All she wanted was to keep helping her Richard, but now even that seemed to be taken from her. The next morning, Richard waited patiently for Emily's visit. 3 hours passed with no sign of the girl. Worried, he called Nurse Margaret. "Margaret, have you seen Emily today?" "No, Mr. Thompson. In fact, security has been instructed not to let her in anymore." "Instructed by whom?" Margaret hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "By Dr. Victoria, sir." The anger Richard felt was so intense, it made the heart monitors spike. Nurses rushed into the room, concerned about his condition. "Everyone out," Richard shouted. "I want to speak to my daughter now." 15 minutes later, Victoria entered the room with a defensive expression. "Dad, you need to calm down. Your blood pressure." "How dare you!" Richard exploded, trying to rise from the bed. "How dare you forbid that child from seeing me? I was protecting you." "Protecting? From what? From someone who makes me happy, from someone who cares about me? She just wants your money. And you don't." The question hit like a slap. Victoria recoiled, hurt. "Dad, I'm your daughter." "You're the daughter who never visited me before I got sick," Richard shot back. "You're the daughter who only shows up to check if I'm still alive long enough to sign papers." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" Richard was shouting now, his hoarse voice echoing through the room. "When was the last time you asked how I was? When was the last time you sat here just to talk to me?" Victoria opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. The truth was, she didn't remember. "You want me to die so badly just to get my inheritance that you can't stand the idea of me getting better," continued Richard, each word heavy with pain and disappointment. "Dad, don't say that. It's the truth. And you know what's saddest? That girl who has nothing showed me more kindness in 1 week than you have in years." Victoria left the room in tears, but Richard didn't regret his words. For the first time, he had said what he truly felt, and it freed him, even if it hurt. Dr. Michael had witnessed part of the argument from the hallway and decided to intervene. He entered the room after Victoria left and found Richard visibly shaken. "Mr. Thompson, you need to calm down. This stress isn't good for your recovery." "Doctor, I need to find that girl," said Richard, ignoring the medical advice. "I need to know if she's okay." "The girl who visited you?" "Yes. My daughter banned her from coming, but I need to see her." Michael studied his patient for a moment. The determination in his eyes was something he hadn't seen before. "Mr. Thompson, may I make a suggestion?" "What?" "Let me look for her. I know some volunteers who work with the homeless. Maybe they can help." Richard nodded, grateful for the first time to have someone willing to help him. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Meanwhile, Emily had found temporary shelter in an abandoned church on the outskirts of the city. Father Gabriel, a 60-year-old man who informally cared for street children, had found her wandering the streets in the early hours of the morning. "My child, you can't keep running," said Father Gabriel, offering her a cup of warm milk. "Tell me what happened." Emily hesitated. She didn't know if she could trust the priest, but her options were limited. "I was helping a sick man at the hospital," she began, "but his daughter didn't like it and sent some men to threaten me." "What kind of threats?" "They told me to disappear and never come back. Said they'd make my life difficult." Father Gabriel shook his head sadly. He knew this kind of situation well, where the powerful used their influence to intimidate the weak. "And this man in the hospital, is he important to you?" "Very," replied Emily, her eyes filling with tears. "He treats me like I'm a real person, like I matter." "You do matter, my child, you always have." "Then why does everyone want to keep me away from him?" Father Gabriel didn't have an easy answer. Life had taught him that people don't always do the right thing, especially when money and power are involved. Sometimes when people are afraid of losing something, they do bad things, he explained. "It doesn't mean you did anything wrong." Dr. Michael spent the next day discreetly investigating Emily's situation. Through contacts with social workers and volunteers, he managed to trace her story. What he discovered left him deeply troubled. Emily Grace Turner had lost her grandmother 2 years earlier and had been living on the streets ever since. She had no known relatives and had been registered with social services multiple times, but always managed to escape the shelters. The reports described an intelligent but traumatized child who distrusted authority. Even more interesting was discovering she had a history of visiting lonely patients at various hospitals in the city. Nurses from other institutions confirmed that Emily would regularly appear to pray for the sick, especially those who never had visitors. "This girl is special," Michael told his colleague, Dr. David. "She's not an opportunist. She's a child who genuinely cares about others' suffering." "And what do you plan to do with this information?" "I'm going to talk to Mr. Thompson. He needs to know the truth about her." When Michael entered Richard's room that afternoon, he found his patient visibly depressed. The monitors showed his vitals had worsened since the previous day. "Doctor, did you find her?" "I got some important information," Michael said, pulling up a chair. "Mr. Thompson, that girl isn't what your daughter thinks she is." Michael recounted everything he had discovered about Emily, from her personal history to her habit of visiting lonely patients. Richard listened in silence, but Dr. Michael could see intense emotions flickering across his face. "She really just wanted to help me," Richard murmured when the doctor finished. "More than that. She has a pattern of behavior that suggests a genuine need to care for others. It's like she processes her own pain by helping people who are suffering." "And where is she now?" "Hiding. The investigators your daughter hired scared her, but I have a contact who might help find her." "Investigators?" Richard's voice dropped dangerously low. "Yes. Apparently, your daughter hired a private investigation firm to dig up something damaging about Emily." The anger Richard felt this time was different from before. It was cold, calculated, the fury of a businessman who had just uncovered betrayal. "Doctor, I need a favor." "What do you need?" "I want you to bring Emily here tonight, no matter how, and I want it done without my daughter knowing." Dr. Michael nodded, realizing he was being pulled into something bigger than a simple medical case. That night, around 10 o'clock, Dr. Michael entered Richard's room, followed by a small, hooded figure. When the figure removed the hood, it revealed Emily, who looked even smaller and more fragile than before. "Mr. Thompson!" she exclaimed, rushing to the bed. "Emily, my dear," Richard said, stretching out his weak arms to embrace her. "I was so worried. I'm sorry I didn't come sooner. Some men scared me and—" I know," Richard interrupted, stroking the girl's messy hair. "It's not your fault." Dr. Michael observed the reunion with professional interest. Almost immediately, Richard's monitors began showing improvements in his vitals. It was as if the girl's presence had a direct calming effect on his nervous system. "Emily, I have something important to tell you," Richard said, holding her small hands. "What is it, Mr. Thompson?" "I found out things about you. About how you visit other patients. About how you care for people you don't even know." Emily lowered her eyes, embarrassed. "Are you mad at me?" "Mad?" Richard nearly laughed. "I'm proud. You're the bravest, kindest person I've ever met." "I'm not brave. I'm afraid of so many things. Being afraid and doing the right thing anyway, that's exactly what bravery means." Emily smiled, and in that moment, Richard had a revelation. It wasn't just about receiving love. It was about having someone to love in return. For years, he hadn't felt that need to protect, to care, to matter to someone else. "Emily, what if I told you I want to take care of you? Not just give you money, but be real family." "You'd do that?" she asked, her eyes shining with hope. "I would, but I need you to help me with one thing. Anything. I need you to forgive me for all the mistakes I've made in my life. I need you to teach me how to be a better person." Emily squeezed Richard's hands tighter. "You're already a good person. You were just sad, alone, but you're not alone anymore." Dr. Michael had to step out of the room for a moment to collect himself. In 20 years of practicing medicine, he had never seen such a profound connection between two patients, because in that moment, he realized both Richard and Emily were healing each other. When Victoria arrived at the hospital the next morning for her routine visit, The receptionist informed her that her father had requested a meeting with her and the family lawyers. "Lawyers, why?" Victoria asked, immediately alarmed. "I don't have that information, doctor, only that it's urgent." Victoria hurried to her father's room, her heart racing. She found him sitting up in bed, more alert than he'd been in weeks, with 2 lawyers at his side and Dr. Michael taking notes. "Dad, what's going on?" "Sit down, Victoria. We have important matters to discuss." "If this is about the girl—" "It's about you," Richard interrupted, his voice firm. "It's about the choices you've made and the consequences of those choices." Victoria sat down slowly, sensing that something fundamental had shifted in their dynamic. "Mr. Jonathan," Richard said, addressing one of the lawyers, "please explain to my daughter the changes I want to make to my will." The lawyer opened a folder and began reading. "In summary, Dr. Victoria, your father wishes to establish a trust fund to be managed by a third party. You will continue to receive a substantial lifelong monthly allowance, but the majority of the inheritance will be directed toward causes related to vulnerable children." Victoria paled. "Dad, you can't do this. I'm your only daughter." "You are my daughter, yes, but you haven't shown yourself ready for the responsibility that comes with so much money." "Responsibility? I've run the company for 10 years. "You've run the company, but you've forgotten to run your own humanity," Richard said sadly. "When you hired investigators to intimidate an orphaned child, you crossed a line that can't be uncrossed." "How did you—" Victoria stopped, realizing she had just confessed. "How did I find out? I have my own contacts too, daughter. Contacts who don't try to frighten innocent children." Dr. Michael watched the exchange with fascination. Richard had clearly planned this revelation, using the information he'd gathered strategically. "Dad, please, can we talk about this privately?" "There's nothing you can say to justify your actions," Richard replied, "but there is something you can do to start making amends." "What?" "You will find Emily and apologize, in person." "Dad?" "This isn't a suggestion, Victoria. It's a condition. If you want to maintain any relationship with me, you'll do this." Victoria looked around the room, searching for support, but found only neutral or disapproving gazes. "And if I refuse?" "Then you'll walk out of my life the same way you tried to push Emily out of hers." The silence that followed was heavy. Victoria visibly wrestled with herself, torn between pride and love for her father. "Where is she?" she finally asked. "Dr. Michael will take you to her." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The drive to the abandoned church was made in silence. Victoria sat in the back seat of Dr. Michael's car, lost in thought. For the first time in years, she was forced to confront her own motivations and actions. Dr. Michael broke the silence as they neared their destination. Victoria, may I offer an observation?" "Go ahead." "Your father isn't doing this to punish you. He's doing this to save you." "Save me from what?" "From becoming someone you won't be able to live with." Victoria didn't respond, but the words echoed in her mind. When they arrived at the church, Father Gabriel greeted them cautiously. "Dr. Michael, I didn't expect to see you here." "Father Gabriel, this is Victoria Thompson. She'd like to speak with Emily." The priest looked at Victoria with obvious suspicion. "She's the daughter of the man Emily was helping." "I am," said Victoria, trying to keep her composure. "The same one who sent investigators after a child." The question was direct and accusatory. Victoria felt as if she were being judged, and perhaps she was. "Yes," she admitted, "and I've come to apologize." Father Gabriel studied her for a long moment before nodding. "Emily is in the back, helping with the other children. But if you do anything to hurt her—" "I won't hurt her," Victoria promised. When Victoria saw Emily for the first time outside the hospital setting, she was shocked. The girl was playing with even younger children, handing out pieces of bread as if they were treasures. There was something about the way she cared for others that struck a chord in Victoria, one she had forgotten existed. "Emily," Father Gabriel called softly. The girl looked up, and upon seeing Victoria, instinctively flinched. "You don't need to be afraid," Victoria said, stepping closer slowly. "I came here to talk to you." "I didn't do anything wrong," Emily said, but her voice trembled. "I know. You never did anything wrong. The one who did wrong was me." Victoria knelt to meet Emily's height, something she had never done with a child in her entire life. "Emily, I have something very important to tell you. I was wrong. Very wrong." "Wrong about what?" "About you. About my father. About what really matters in life." Emily studied Victoria's face, searching for signs of deceit, but there was something different there, something vulnerable she hadn't seen before. "I was afraid," Victoria continued. "Afraid my father loved you more than me, afraid of losing his love. But I was so busy protecting what I thought was mine that I forgot to try to deserve that love." "Your father talks about you all the time," Emily said timidly. "He gets sad when he talks about you." "Sad? Why?" "Because he thinks you don't like him. He thinks you only care about his money." Emily's words hit Victoria like a punch to the gut. She had spent so long assuming her father didn't love her that she never considered he might think the same about her. "Emily, can you forgive me?" "I already have," Emily said simply. "Grandma Ruth always said holding on to anger is like holding a hot coal. It only burns the one holding it." "And can you help me?" "Help with what?" "To be a better daughter. To make my father truly happy." Emily smiled for the first time since Victoria arrived. "I can try." That afternoon, an unusual scene unfolded in Richard Thompson's hospital room. Victoria entered with Emily, but this time there was no tension between them. In fact, they were whispering about something that made Emily laugh. "Dad," Victoria said, approaching the bed, "I brought Emily to visit you." Richard looked surprised at the two, immediately noticing the shift in their dynamic. "How are you two getting along?" "Victoria told me funny stories about when she was little," Emily said, climbing onto the chair beside the bed. "She said she once tried to fly by, jumping off the bed with a sheet tied to her back." Richard laughed, a genuine laugh he hadn't had in years. "I remember that. You landed right on your mother's cat. Poor Whiskers." "The cat was mad for a whole week," Victoria added, and for the first time in decades, father and daughter laughed together over a shared memory. Dr. Michael, watching from the doorway, made mental notes. The effect of this family reunion on Richard's vital signs was remarkable. But more than that, there was a qualitative change in her expression, in her posture, in her way of interacting. "Dad," said Victoria, suddenly serious, "I have something important to tell you." "What is it, sweetheart?" "I love you, and I know I haven't shown it the right way over the years. I know I've been cold, calculating, that I only showed up here when I needed something. But I want you to know you've always been important to me." Richard fell silent, too moved to speak. "And I also want to say, I understand why you grew so attached to Emily. She has something special, something I lost along the way but want to find again." "Victoria," Richard began, "let me finish. I want to be part of both of your lives. I want to learn from Emily how to be a better person. I want to learn from you how to be a better daughter. And I want us to be a real family." Emily looked between father and daughter, her eyes shining with joy. It was as if she could see the pieces of a broken family coming back together. "What about the will?" Richard asked. "Keep the changes," said Victoria. "Actually, I have a better proposal." "What is it?" "I want you to get better first. I want you to leave here and come live with us, the three of us, as a family." "With us?" Emily asked, surprised. "If you'll have us," said Victoria, looking at the girl. "If you'll give us a chance to be the family you deserve." Richard held the hands of his two girls and felt something he hadn't felt in decades. True hope. "Dr. Michael," he called, "what's my real prognosis?" The doctor stepped closer, reviewing his charts. "Honestly, Mr. Thompson, your recovery these past few weeks has been extraordinary. If you keep this up, I don't see any reason why you can't be discharged soon." "Then it's settled," said Richard, determined. "We're going home, all three of us." Over the next few days, something magical happened at Mercy General Hospital. The story of the billionaire, the orphan girl, and the daughter who rediscovered love spread among staff and patients. Emily now had official permission to visit not just Richard but other lonely patients, always accompanied by Victoria. Victoria discovered her presence made a difference too. Her business experience helped solve practical problems some patients faced, while Emily tended to their emotional needs. They became an unlikely but effective team. "You know what's funny?" Victoria said to Emily as they left the room of an elderly woman who hadn't had visitors in months. "What?" "I spent my whole life thinking helping others was a waste of time, but now I see it's the only thing truly worth doing." "Grandma Ruth used to say we get back everything we give to others," Emily replied. "But she also said it only works when we give sincerely, without expecting anything in return. Your grandmother was very wise. She was. I think she'd be happy to know I found a family." Victoria felt her eyes well up. All her adult life, she'd avoided emotional displays, seeing them as signs of weakness. But Emily was teaching her that vulnerability was actually a form of strength. "Emily, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you forgive me so easily, after everything I did to keep you away from my dad?" Emily stopped walking and looked at Victoria seriously. "Because I understood you were hurting too, and hurt people sometimes hurt others without meaning to, but that doesn't make them bad. How do you see things so clearly? Grandma Ruth taught me to look at people's hearts, not just their actions." "Your heart was always good. It was just hidden behind a lot of fear." Victoria spontaneously hugged Emily, something she'd never done with a child before. And in that embrace, she felt she was reconnecting with a part of herself she had lost long ago. On the day of Richard's discharge, Mercy General Hospital was celebrating. Staff who had followed his journey came to say goodbye, and many other patients Emily had visited were also there. Dr. Michael made sure to personally oversee his departure. "Mr. Thompson, in 20 years of medicine, I've never seen a recovery like yours." "It was a team effort, Doctor," Richard replied, looking at Emily and Victoria. "These two saved me from more than just an illness." "And what do you plan to do now?" Victoria and Richard exchanged knowing glances. "We have a project," said Victoria. "We're going to create a shelter for homeless children. But not just any shelter. A place where they can feel truly loved and cared for." "And Emily will help design everything," Richard added. "After all, she understands better than anyone what these children need." "We'll call it Grandma Ruth's Home," Emily said, smiling, "to honor her memory." Dr. Michael smiled, moved. "Can I keep up with your progress?" "Doctor, you'll be our official physician," Richard said. "If you'd like, of course." "It would be an honor." The Thompson mansion underwent significant renovations to accommodate its new resident. Emily's room was decorated by her, with bright colors and space for all her new books. Victoria had discovered the girl had an insatiable thirst for knowledge. But the most meaningful change was in the relationship between father and daughter. Richard began including Victoria in all major decisions, not as a subordinate but as a partner. And Victoria, in turn, started valuing her father's opinions and feelings above the numbers in financial reports. "Dad," Victoria said one evening as the three of them ate dinner together, "can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Why did you never remarry after Mom died?" Richard grew thoughtful for a moment. "I think I closed myself off to love after I lost your mother. I thought loving someone meant risking losing them. So I focused on work, money, things I thought I could control. And now I realize the risk of losing someone is worth it when you get to love them while they're here." Emily listened quietly, but Victoria could see she was absorbing every word. The girl had a special way of learning from others' experiences, turning pain into wisdom. "Emily," Victoria said, "what about you? Did you ever think about what having parents would be like?" "I always did," Emily admitted, "but I never imagined it would be like this. I never imagined it would be this good." "How did you imagine it?" "I thought parents were people who bossed you around, but you treat me like my opinions matter." "Your opinions do matter," Richard said firmly. "You're part of this family now, and real families listen to each other." That night, after Emily went to sleep, Victoria and Richard stayed talking in the living room. "Dad, can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" "Of course." "I always envied kids whose parents played with them. You were always working, and I ended up believing that working was the only way to earn your love." Richard felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. "Victoria, I'm not blaming you, Dad. I'm trying to explain why I reacted so badly when I saw you showing affection to Emily. It was like she was getting something I never had. But you've always had my love, sweetheart. Maybe I didn't know how to show it, but you've always had it. I know that now, and I also know it's never too late to start over." Richard hugged his daughter, and they both cried tears of relief and forgiveness. 3 months later, Grandma Ruth's home opened its doors. The center was built on the grounds of Richard's former company, which he had sold to fund the project. It was a welcoming place with individual rooms for each child, classrooms, a library, a community kitchen, and even a small chapel. Emily, now dressed in new clothes but with the same warm personality, helped welcome the first children. She knew exactly how they felt: scared, distrustful, waiting for the moment they'd be rejected again. "Don't be afraid," she said to a group of newly arrived children. "Here, you're truly loved." "How do you know?" asked a boy of about 12 with visible scars from a difficult life. "Because I've been where you are, and I found out there are people in the world who truly care. You just have to give them a chance to prove it." Victoria watched the scene with admiration. Emily had become a natural bridge between the traumatized children and the adults who wanted to help. Her own experience made her credible in a way no social worker or psychologist could be. "She's amazing," remarked Dr. Michael, who had come for the opening ceremony. "She saved our family," Victoria replied, "and now she's saving other children too." "And how do you feel about all this, about the change in your life?" Victoria looked around the center. Children playing in the courtyard, Richard chatting animatedly with donors, Emily helping a little girl feel at home. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm doing something that really matters. For years, I thought success meant accumulating things. Now I realize it means giving things to others." The opening ceremony was moving. Father Gabriel blessed the place. Several of Richard's former patients came to show support, and even some hospital staff were present. When it was time for speeches, Richard stepped onto the small makeshift stage. "A few months ago, I was lying in a hospital bed believing my life was over. I couldn't understand why I was sick, why no treatments worked. But then a brave girl walked into my room and taught me something I'd forgotten, that healing sometimes doesn't come from medicine, but from the connections we make with others." Richard looked at Emily, seated in the front row between Victoria and Father Gabriel. "Emily taught me that love isn't something we lose when we give it away. It's something that multiplies, and it's never too late to learn how to truly love." But she didn't just heal me. She healed my entire family. She brought my daughter back to me. And now we hope this place can be a space of healing for many other families. The applause was long and heartfelt. But the most touching moment came when Emily spontaneously stood and walked to the stage. "I wanted to say something," she spoke into the microphone, her voice small but clear. "Grandma Ruth always said there are no orphans when there's love in the world. For a long time, I didn't understand what she meant. But now I do. Family isn't just who gives birth to us. Family is who chooses to love and care for us, and who we choose to love and care for too. Mr. Richard and Victoria chose me to be their family, and all the children who will live here will also be chosen. They'll be loved. They'll have a real family." There wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Even Victoria, who had spent decades avoiding public displays of emotion, wept openly. After the ceremony, the 3 generations of the Thompson family walked through the center's gardens. The sun was setting, painting everything in golden hues. "Dad," Victoria said, "can I ask you one last question?" "As many as you want, my dear." "Do you regret anything?" Richard thought for a moment, watching Emily play with some of the new children. "I regret taking so long to understand what truly matters in life, but I don't regret the path that brought me here, because it brought me you two." "And you, Emily?" Victoria asked. "What did you like most about this whole story?" Discovering that Grandma Ruth was right, Emily replied, taking her new parents' hands. Stories can have happy endings even when they start out very sad. And what do you think our happy ending is? Richard asked. It's not an ending, Emily said, smiling. It's a beginning. As they walked back home, the three carried in their hearts the certainty that they had discovered something precious, that true love has the power to heal not just sick bodies, but wounded souls, and that it's never too late to start over, to forgive, to choose love over fear. The promise Richard had made months earlier, to give his fortune in exchange for healing, had come true in a way he never imagined. He hadn't just given his material wealth, he had given his heart, and in return, he hadn't just received physical healing, but the emotional and spiritual healing that had completely transformed him. Emily, in turn, had gained so much more than money. She had gained a family, a home, and the chance to help other children find the same love she had found. And Victoria had discovered that the true legacy her father had left wasn't in banks or investments, but in the ability to love without reservation and to make a difference in others' lives. That night, after Emily had fallen asleep and Victoria had retired to her room, Richard stood by his bedroom window for a while, gazing at the stars. For the first time in decades, he felt completely at peace. He thought about the promise he had made to Emily on that first day. If your prayer heals me, I'll give you my fortune. The irony was that he had given so much more than his fortune. He had given his heart, his family, his life, and in return, he had received infinitely more than he ever thought possible. Emily's prayers had truly healed him, not through magic or miracles, but through the transformative power of unconditional love. She had shown him that true wealth wasn't in what he owned, but in what he could give, and that true healing didn't come from medicine, but from genuine human connections. When he finally lay down to sleep, Richard smiled, thinking about the next day. Emily had asked to help in the center's kitchen. Victoria wanted to implement a vocational training program for the teens, and he had a meeting with architects to discuss expanding the project. It was funny how life could change so completely. Months ago, he spent his days counting the hours until his next doctor's visit, hopeless and purposeless. Now he could hardly wait to see what difference they could make in the world. The last thing Richard thought before falling asleep was Grandma Ruth's wisdom, passed down through Emily. Stories can have happy endings, even when they start out very sad. His story had begun with sadness, loneliness, and disillusionment, but it had turned into something beautiful. A reunited family, transformed lives, and the promise that many more children would have the chance to write their own happy endings. And it had all started with a brave little girl who walked into his room and offered the only thing she had, her love. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. If you had a special moment during the narrative, share your heartfelt thoughts in the comments. Do you think Victoria made the right choice by accepting Emily as family? We'd love to hear your opinion. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other heartwarming stories.